Hi, my name is Will Townsend. I'm a senior analyst with Moor Insights and Strategy. I cover networking and telco. And joining me today is Bala Thekkedath. He's a principal with Amazon Web Services, and Alido de Giovanni with Summit Tech. And I think everyone is very familiar with AWS, but Alido, can you tell us a little bit about Summit Tech and what you do?
Well, we at Summit develop carrier communication stacks for mobile platforms available in millions of smartphones in the US across leading carriers. In essence, the embedded services within smartphones, which provide voice, video calling, and messaging capabilities, as well as rich communication services, including RCS business messaging, chatbots, for carrier networks. We've now extended our RCS capabilities to support our real-time live streaming VR services through 5G MEC with Wavelength, enabling live stream 360 shopping, live concerts in 360, and esports, amongst other events.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. And we're going to talk a lot about the Edge and Wavelength, and I want to start with Bala. So Bala, why is the Edge relevant to Amazon Web Services?
Well, that's a straightforward answer. Right? We are a very customer-centric company. 90% of what we develop is based directly on what customers tell us they need. And the rest 10% is based on what we think the customers need. They're not able to articulate exactly, but we invent on their behalf. So Edge is there. It is relevant to us because it's relevant today to our customers. Most of our customers, when they look at what their profile will be 10, 20 years from now, they know that their IT infrastructure and the servers, they're all going to be in the cloud. Mm-hmm. What they will have is a profile of connected devices in the on premises that will exist. And in many cases, by virtue of what these devices are, they will likely be limited in the amount of compute and storage and memory that they can afford to have on the devices itself. And that makes it important for our customers that they have access to powerful compute, storage, and advanced services like machine learning and analytics that can be executed as close as possible to these connected devices, so that the capabilities that they want to provide are not coupled to what the device version is, what the capability of the device is. They can execute all those high-end functions somewhere very close to the devices and reach, transmit the results back or get data to where it needs to be at much lower latencies. And it's not just for connected devices in the IoT space. It's also customers are developing applications that require processing much closer to the edge, real-time game streaming or inserting interactive elements to a live video stream. All these are applications that our customers are working on, and that requires them to have a strong portfolio of compute and advanced processing services much closer to where the consumption point or the generation point for that data is, right? So that is the genesis of the move to the edge, right? So that's how a lot of the AWS services are today already offered at the edge. With AWS Outpost, we have the Snow family, we have the IoT solutions, we have AWS Wavelength. And with all these offerings today, we are already letting our customers choose choose where they want to process or analyze data. Should it be in the device? Should it be on premises? Should it be at the edge? Or should it be in the main AWS region, right? And they have that choice because we enable the same kind of capabilities everywhere. We offer them the same single pane glass of management, no matter where they choose to do that processing, right? So in the end, we are at the edge because that's where our customers want us to be. We enable three main things for them. One, we offer them the agility to get their products to market faster because they have access to the latest technologies. They have the value of the cloud model, elasticity, the pay-as-you-go pricing, and all these powerful services can be accessed wherever they want. And the second we enable them to improve the performance of the applications and the experience they offer to their end users just by virtue of being much closer to where they need us to be for executing these functions. And third, but definitely not the least important one, we enable a lot of new business models for our customers by being so close to where the data is consumed or the data is generated. So that opens up a whole new possibility of business models and applications for many of our ISVs in many verticals.
Now, I love, Amazon Web Services focus and strategy on customer first. I mean, obviously, that's been very successful for you. And, I know, companies like Alido's have very challenging environments from a development perspective. And so, Alido, I'm curious, what were some of the challenges that you were faced with, maybe a day in the life before you discovered the power of the edge?
Well, it's no secret development cycles on typical telecom platforms can take longer, not because of capabilities, but there is a higher expectation of quality of service. Mm-hmm. Whereas the OTT market is typically built upon best effort networks, the internet, the Wild West, if you may, mm-hmm. To ensure QoS. Telecom typically requires a structured foundation. There is a value to both approaches. With this in mind, it can be challenging in developing global services, which in a telecom space would mean multi-carrier support. Services which need to take into consideration both telecom and OTT. Mm-hmm. Carriers are mostly independent organizations who evolve at different speeds. There is some uniformity in base services for interoperability purposes between networks, but their markets are typically local. The varying speeds at which they evolve often results in having to support varying platforms globally, which means for us to scale globally, we would require to accommodate all the variations. This takes time and is often out of reach for most organizations focusing on innovation, especially for mobility with carriers. For Summit, we are focused on delivering next generation communication platform based on 4K, 8K real-time live streams with carrier communication services and micro apps embedded. Just 2 years ago, this was nearly impossible on mobile devices for many reasons: power, battery consumption. We were looking for an emerging platform, and there comes MEC, a platform to offload the processing power through tile encoding. What we quickly discovered again was how challenging this was going to be on a carrier by carrier basis. Mm-hmm. Not impossible, but most certainly potentially time consuming. Then press release comes out and lo and behold, we discovered Wavelength. We immediately understood what this meant. What we had estimated to be months of work for one carrier alone now meant only weeks of work for dozens of carriers. We knew then and there this was a game changer. Mm-hmm. The work we had already completed on AWS for standard bearers, and now with regards to 5G, was almost virtually instantly available. It was a game changer.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that game changer, aspect of Wavelength, and we're going to talk about that here in a moment. I actually spent time with AWS at reInvent last year, was exposed to the Wavelength platform, wrote a Forbes article about it, and I kind of summarize it as, it has the ability to really supercharge 5G. So Bala, let's turn it over to you. And what exactly is Wavelength? What's it all about? And what's the value proposition? I mean, we've heard Alido talk to some things here, but would love to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wavelength is essentially an AWS infrastructure offering that we optimize for mobile edge computing, right? With wavelengths, we create what we call as wavelength zones. And these wavelength zones are AWS infrastructure deployments that are embedded within the telco data center, right at the edge of a 5G network. And the biggest advantage is that now traffic from application endpoints on 5G devices, they do not need to traverse the internet to reach the application service that are running in the cloud. So we bring the cloud infrastructure right at the edge of the network. Now, with 77 availability zones in 24 regions, we were already enabling developers to serve their end users with low latencies worldwide. but increasingly, we are seeing a lot more of these applications like interactive live streaming, AR, VR, multiplayer gaming, inference at the edge that require even lower latencies, especially when accessed over a mobile network. If you were to go the traditional mobile architecture route, application traffic from a device goes to the cell tower, then it goes to the metro aggregation side, then it goes to the regional aggregation side, then it transits the internet, and then it gets to the AWS servers. And that essentially results in tens of milliseconds of latencies between those endpoints. And some of these applications that are being developed now, especially for 5G networks, cannot operate with the same efficiency if that is the latency profile. 5G is essentially 10 times or faster than 4G. But as long as you do not cut down the network transit delay that comes from multiple hops reaching to the destination servers, customers will never be able to use the full advantage of 5G. So one of the biggest advantage that that Wavelength offers is really by putting the AWS infrastructure right next to the 5G aggregation point in the telco data center. That traffic doesn't need to traverse the internet. It is residing within the telco network and reaching the servers there. So essentially you are short circuiting all that network transit and the multiple hops for that application traffic. And that is what allows us to serve end users or allows our customers to develop applications that have ultra low latency profiles for round trip transit times. And so the first benefit is essentially that ultra low latency access to compute and storage and powerful cloud services, and that itself results in new applications, new business models, and many of those things. But the two really important things that make Wavelength stand out. One is a consistent developer experience. If you are an AWS customer and you have been developing on AWS for some time, you now have the exact same APIs, the same programming tools, the same development environment, and you can develop applications and deploy it to a telco network edge. Right. And if you are new to AWS and you are starting with developing applications on the edge, it is the exact same skills and the exact same tools that you would use eventually when you want to scale your applications and do more on the AWS cloud. So it is a seamless development environment and experience for developers. And the other big advantage is the ubiquity and the scale at which you can reach customers with wavelength zones. If you are, imagine if you are a developer with a really cool application that needs to reside at the telco edge. You do not want to go to every single telco in the world and understand and define how you would reside and how you would deploy to their edge, because then you're talking about hundreds of deployment scenarios, hundreds of different semantics of operation. We eliminate all that with Wavelength. So once you develop an application on AWS, you can deploy it to any wavelength zone we have in our network. Today, we have wavelength zones available on Verizon's 5G network, and we have announced wavelength zones with Vodafone in EMEA, with KDDI in Japan, with SKT in South Korea. But and that as that footprint grows, if you are a mobile application developer or an ISP that is developing an application that needs to reach a user base connected over 5G networks, the deployment and operation and the scale at which you can grow that is something that Wavelength helps you to do very simply. You just you keep adding these wavelength zones to your virtual private cloud, add a carrier gateway so that you can reach customers through that telco network, and you are deployed in that carrier's network, right? So you do not have the complexity that is involved in negotiating those operations and deployment scenarios with every single telco. We take care of that for you.
No, it's quite impressive. And, Bala, you touched on some points that Alido touched on earlier around, driving agility and simplicity and that sort of thing. Alido, I'd like to kind of wrap up the conversation, with you. What are some additional benefits that you're seeing with Wavelength? I mean, you mentioned it's a game changer from a development perspective, but what are some other things that you're seeing that it's bringing disruption to?
For one, faster time to market. AWS had already reduced our time to market for OTT solutions requiring global reach.
Mm-hmm.
Now with Wavelength, we can pretty much be at par with carrier-based services. It is incredible. We can spin up cloud-native telecom platforms on demand. In the past, developing solutions for devices which range from low-end capability GPU smartphones to high-end devices was problematic, quite time-consuming and costly. But with Wavelength, and where we can spin up containers which services which can dynamically adapt to client requirements, is priceless. Developers can focus on fewer variables and develop for MEC platforms. Much simpler. As for simplification, easier deployment and management for services across multiple carriers. Deployment in the past was a long process, from lab to pre-production to live networks. It was a journey. With cloud, spin up containers, test, deploy at the edge through Wavelength, and voila. There are definitely benefits for DevOps as well. One team can manage OTT and multiple carriers simultaneously. And then there's obviously the issue of scale. Alongside 5G, we still have wired and Wi-Fi to contend with for quite some time. And for global scale, it is priceless. The same platform can be serving both edge and users on conventional bearers. And then there's, intelligence. Wavelength has the power to transform the traditional dump pipe, if you may. Exactly. Focused on access into one that can harness the power of lower latency to unlock transformative capabilities, capacity, and use cases. It is contrary to how some believe networks should operate, but this kind of reminds me of a quote from George Gilder, in where he said, in the world of dumb terminals and networks, networks have to be smart. But in a world of smart terminals, networks have to be dumb. Today, I'd have to say, in a world of intelligent networks, it is quite redundant to replicate intelligence in every terminal. In a world of smart clouds, intelligence can remain at the edge. And finally, there's personalization capabilities that have the potential to create service stickiness and higher operator ARPU. Example, customizing an HQ stream with user-specific content with embedded micro apps and services was unimaginable just a short time ago, let alone battery savings for the user and bandwidth efficiencies for the carrier, both CapEx and OpEx savings. Just as the just-in-time manufacturing model was transformative and transformed the manufacturing industry, Wavelength and MEC have the capacity to transform the mobile service industry by spinning up customized and adaptive services to meet rapidly changing demand.
No, it's exciting, when you add the power of the edge and Wavelength with 5G. You talked about, the focus in the past, Alido has been access. This is going to open a whole new number of use cases that are going to drive incremental revenue for service providers. They're going to provide amazing experiences for consumers and unlock amazing digital transformation use cases for enterprises as well. So it's going to be exciting to see how this all unfolds. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. Alido, calling in from Montreal. Bala from Fremont, California, right? You can tell I'm a Texan. And myself from Austin, Texas. Thanks again, guys. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Alido.